The next part of our website after we've done this main image here is to put in the first block section of text. Now here we're going to make really good efficient use of classes because we're going to repeat the same formatting on the following blocks of text in the next sections. I've already decided I'm going to have a maximum width of around 80% and I'm going to change some of the line height. We've already played around with fonts and things, so we don't need to worry too much about that. Relatively easy once you know how to do this, but there are a few little technical details we have to make sure that we get right so that it works properly. So we're going to make further use of the section tag to create a new area or section of our website. We're going to use classes efficiently and look at how we can do that. We're going to look at how we can center containers, so we're going to take that whole section tag that wraps around our content and center that whole section. We're going to then align the text within that container, and we're going to look at how we can change the line height. So straight back into our website here, I actually just copied some text from the Wikipedia page for Switzerland, and I'm going to go straight over to my HTML and put that code in. I'll put that text in. So this is the previous section that we made. It's just an empty section in terms of the content except with that background image, of course. So I'm going to make a whole new section, and let's give it a class name of text block. Now I'm going to make a paragraph tag within that and just simply paste in all of that text from Wikipedia. So you can see it looks kind of messy when we paste that into our website like this, and I'll just tidy up that indentation of the P tag there so that lines up. Don't worry too much about the text itself not lining up. That's mainly because of the wrapping issues we have when we have so much text, but I have just straightened it up there so it's consistent at least and looks a little nicer. So now we have a new section of our website that we've created, and we can use our CSS to style that appropriately. If we just go and have a look at our live preview now, we can have a look to see our nav bar stays fixed at the top. So when we scroll down, that's working fine, and we've got our text in underneath, of course with no margin padding or formatting at the moment, except for that the font has changed and the font size has changed because we defined that in our CSS rule right at the top when we had the font family and the font size changing as appropriate. Now you can see here when we scroll this website, I had intended for this background image to stay fixed, but in the previous video I forgot to add the absolute crucial CSS rule that will make that happen. So this is what the default behavior. You see when you scroll the page, the image moves up and the text moves up with it. But we want to add a sort of a sliding effect and keep that image in place. So really simple to do. We just need to add one more rule to our hero image class. So I'll zoom in on that, and we have another property that we can add, background attachment. And we want to use fixed in this case. So now when I go back to my live preview, let's see how this looks. So this is the default view of the home page. When I scroll my mouse wheel down, instead of this top image moving with the text, you can see the text goes up over the top of it, creates that sliding effect, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now let's look at how we can format this text block section, because obviously we want to create some white space around it to make it look a little nicer. Back in our CSS, we're going to add the rule for our class that we just defined. So that was text block. And we've got a couple of rules we want to apply. To start with, we're going to put a margin, and let's put a margin. We use 0 and auto to center something, but actually the 0 can be replaced with another number that of course represents the margin at the top and the bottom, and I want some space between that image and the text, so I'm going to put 50 pixels in there. So it's 50 pixels top and bottom, and automatic margins left and right. Now because at the moment we haven't specified the width of it, you can still see it is going 100% of the width, so that margin isn't really taking an effect at the bottom, but that top margin, on the sides, but that top margin is in place. So let's add in a width, and I'll set the width to 70% in this case. Now you can see that has worked, and the margin set to auto left and right has meant that whatever size our viewport is in, our section, which we've defined with that class name text block, is now centered, so it has equal margins left and right. So that's looking a lot better now. The text is still quite cramped, still quite close together, so we need to create a little bit of space in there to make it a little bit easier to read. So we're going to change the line height property of that as well. So within, again, our text block rules, we're going to change line height to 150%. And if we look over now, it's looking a lot nicer. It's a lot more spread out, a lot easier to read. So now we're actually going to spend a bit of time analyzing what's happening here and having a look at what that 70% does. So when we have the window full screen, this block here takes up 70% of the width of the whole screen. So that means when we resize this window, as you make it bigger or smaller, that will adjust to 70% of what you can see. But as we get down to a smaller window size, you can see we've got quite large margins here because they're still set to 30% effectively, those margins, but when the window gets smaller, that gives you less and less space to read. So what we might want to do instead is have it so when it's really large like that, we have bigger margins, and then as it gets a little bit smaller, at some point we'll switch it so that it goes to a percentage. Now there are a few ways that we can do this. We're not going to go into really complex detail to do it, but there's a little simple trick we can do to make it happen. So what I'm going to do to start with, if I just rearrange my windows so you can see one on top of the other, and I go to full screen there, I've got my width set here at 70%. I'm just going to change that to 90% because that's what I want to have when it gets smaller, so I have smaller margins on the side. So now my margins are set to 90%, and as I adjust it from here, you can see that makes it a little bit easier to read, a little bit less space on the sides. So that's pretty good. But that means when it's full screen like this, it's really wide, that text block, and we probably don't need it that wide. It makes it quite hard for the user to read. So what we can do is we can set a maximum width of that block, and if we set this in pixels, that will effectively override the percentage until that 90% gets smaller than the amount we specify in the maximum width. So if I specify this, let's say at 1200 pixels, and refresh my page down here, you can see that it's got smaller now, it's less wide. So that's actually 1200 pixels wide now, that block. And if I resize this window, it will remain 1200 pixels wide until that 90% of the width of that window is less than 1200 pixels, and then you'll start getting smaller margins and it'll go to 90%. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see what's happening there. So what we could do is if we go into our full screen view again, and I right click on this paragraph and I go to inspect, this will bring up our Chrome developer tools. Now we haven't looked at this yet. I know many of you have played around with it already, but there's lots of useful things going on here. So when I resize the window, if you look up the top here, you can see the actual resolution of the window that we've got off the viewport. So at the moment it's 1433 wide and about 973 high. Also down in the bottom right, you'll see our familiar box model. So you can see that we have the content in the middle, and you can see the size of that. You can see that it's actually set to 1200 wide at the moment and 648 high. The padding that goes around it, the border that goes around that, and then any margin, and they're all color coded. So if I actually put my mouse over this, or if I click on one of the elements here like the section, you can see the padding that's color coded around it, and it matches up with that box model down there. So now, as I mentioned before, you can see that that's set to 1200 down there, because that's what we said for the minimum width is set to 1200 pixels. So as we adjust this, we'll get to a point where it will no longer be, so you can see it's changed here, it's no longer 1200 pixels, because now the 90% width of the overall width is less than that 1200 pixels we set as the maximum, so it will change at that point. So if I go back to full screen and let's do that again, you can see that around this point, just there, it changes from being 1200 pixels wide to being 90% of the width of the window wide. Okay, if that was all a little bit confusing for you, don't worry about that too much at the moment. We will go over these concepts a little bit more going forward, and you can just stick to either specifying the width purely using a percentage or using a pixel width as well. But if we combine them like this, you can create that slightly more professional look and elements of a responsive design. Okay, that'll do it for this video. We've built up the next section, we've put in lots of properties, we've explored the Chrome developer tools just a little bit, and we've got another section of our website made.